Hey, there you
All
are.
right. Well,
Now
that's
we're cooking. Sorry,
all
we
right.
started we started too late. I apologize, everyone. Welcome, welcome. I just want to say, give a couple of folks a couple minutes to join. I see you guys out there waving hi. Hey, Heart and Soul. Hey, Athena. Thank you so much for joining us today. A lot is going on, right? And I
Yeah.
just want to take a moment and a couple of things. Hi, Loving Day. Preppy Keith, I see you. Um, I just want to take some time and do, a moment of silence for those that we have lost that we are going to be talking about during this conversation. So if we could just give 15 seconds moment of silence. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. And to also recognize the land that we are on, and that we are stewards of. I want to make sure that we recognize them as well. Um, Dr. Jenn, I know you very well, and Masks knows you very well, but
Yeah.
I think I'd like to just start off by checking in with you
Mhm.
and seeing how you're doing right now as well.
Ugh, I mean, you know, I'm trying. It's just day by day. That's the way I'm trying to look at it. Like maybe not even day by day, but just like moment by moment. So I've
Some,
been. What'd you say?
no, that's all sometimes we can do, right?
Yeah, I've been definitely, feeling lots of helplessness, lots of just like almost paralyzed. Like what can I do? And then sadness, lots of sadness, lots of grief, lots of anger, just all of that at the same time. So
Yeah, I hear someone is saying I am drained, and I think we
yeah.
can feel that.
Oh my God,
Um,
that's it.
and
Exhaustion.
and that's why Mask wanted to take this time, and I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't know the answers, and we are looking to our community, and we're listening, and we're going to try and help. But as just an introduction, Dr. Jenn Noble, she's a licensed psychologist with a PhD in clinical psychology. She provides psychotherapy to children, teens, and their parents, and especially enjoys working with parents to help them get a deep understanding of their parenting and its impact on their children. You have an online program as well, right? So kind of talk to us about the program that you have, and then we'll start answering questions. If any
Yeah.
folks have them, go ahead and start.
Yeah, so the online program, it's definitely for parents. It's for parents of mixed teens. So, as you know, the work that MASC does, the work that I do, is focused heavily a lot on mixed race population. And I just find that a lot of times the teenage years is when we really start exploring our identity, our mixed race identity, and try to understand that. And a lot of times parents are kind of stuck and they don't know what to do. They don't know what to say. They realize maybe I didn't say enough those first, whatever years, 11 years, maybe I should have done this or I should have opened that conversation. And now maybe they feel like it's too late, and it's not, because a lot of times, even what you say when they're young doesn't hit until they start exploring themselves. So it's really a program to help parents help the teen navigate that. Like now that they're doing it, how can you guide them a little bit better? How can you be there for them when they have the questions? How can you understand the mixed race experience and know what your teen is going to be facing? And so, yeah, that's what it is in a nutshell.
Thank you. So let's get into talking
Yeah,
about, kind of what's happening right now. And, just want to talk about folks are what they're feeling, and especially parents of Black children. that you know, we want to make space for them and share their stories. So if you're in there, talk, you know, please leave us a question and we could relay that to Dr. Jenn. If you would just kind of talk to us about maybe some of the things of your parents, what they're kind of talking to you about right now.
Oh, all the parents are just, I mean, a lot of the parents I work with are with a little bit older kids, you know, teens and up. So the teens are talking about it. So the parents are kind of trying to meet them there. Um, but I do have a couple of parents with a little bit younger kids, and they're sort of like, we thought maybe we needed to protect our kid because they were only, you know, 10 and we didn't know what to say, how to approach it. But then that kid came to them like, what's happened? Like, I saw this, or what does this mean? And why is everybody out?
Yeah.
And so, you know, the couple families have just been able to be like, all right, you brought it up, let's go there. And I think I mean, that's really the way you have to start everything is the parent has to be ready to talk about it. You know,
Yeah. Well, I think Preppy Keith was on asking, and I love all these names. Thank you guys. Um, wants to know, you talked about teens and tweens, and so is there an age that you would, you know, maybe,
yeah,
you know, start talking about it, or, you know, because you, as you said, like my children, my youngest is 12, and it's on TikTok,
right,
it's
right.
on Twitter, you know, so they are, you know, having
There's
access to this information. And so, uh, what age would you kind of talk about, you know?
honestly, the age you start is the as soon as they can talk, that's when you start talking about this. You start talking about it 3 and 4. Of course, you're not going to talk about it at a 14-year-old level. It's going to go over their heads. But you talk about it as best you can with what you kind of understand your 4-year-old gets. You don't have to be a developmental psychologist to know what's right and what's wrong to say to a kid. You know, how many times have you seen a parent that's like with their 3-year-old and they're like trying to explain why they shouldn't have the cookie and nutrition, and you know, the 3-year-old's like, half of what you're saying is going over my head,
Right.
but I'm understanding you don't want me to have a cookie, and okay, this is, you know. So it's kind of like that. You say what you can, as soon as they're ready to talk about it, because we know kids at 3 and 4 and 5 years old, they already understand racial differences. They can even start showing racial preference. So they see it, they understand it, and so you should be there to talk about it with them. What I always say to a parent is, if you shy away from talking about this, about race specifically, especially if your kid comes and asks you and they're 4 and you're like, oh, don't worry about it, sweetie, you're sending a message that it's somehow wrong,
Mm.
it's bad, they shouldn't talk about it, it's an off limit topic. So now you've shut a door that really needs to be open. So, you know, and mainly you shut that door because you were uncomfortable, you were scared. So it's as soon as they're, you know, as soon as they can talk, you can talk about it.
I'm seeing some snaps. I have some folks pressing you know, saying yes.
Yeah,
Um, it is it is really important to start those conversations early. And you talk about parental comfort. So
yeah,
how do you even back up before
yeah,
you even have the conversation? You're talking about, you know, I need to find out that information
yeah,
first, right? So uh,
yeah.
I need to be armed with some information as well as a parent.
I mean, but the truth is, a lot of parents aren't. You don't have to have a political science degree. You don't have to be a historian. You can turn to other things to help you. You know, Google is your friend. You know, you again, if you're looking at a 5-year-old, you're looking at an 8-year-old, you're not giving them a dissertation. So you don't, that insecurity, you can just be like, I already know more than them because I am a full-on adult. Like, no matter what, they don't know. So they have zero knowledge. And so if you give them a little bit, you gave them way more than they had before. So you got to forgive yourself in that level. But there's books that help you. So I was going to suggest, especially if we have any parents here, like I just read a comment of a child that's Black and Latino, 6-year-old child.
Mm.
Um, you know, we got probably a lot of parents with mixed race kids on here. And so there's a great book by Jelani Memory, which is a kid's book about racism. And it's it's such a well done kids book. It's like story, you know, it's kids language. It's got great illustrations. And it even, I mean, it introduces terms like microaggressions at a level a little kid can understand. And the nice thing about Jelani Memory is that he himself is mixed race. So it's kind of cool. He talks about his own experience being, you know, having one parent that's Black, one parent that's white, but then experiencing racism. And so, I mean, things like that is the easiest place to start if you feel like you're at a loss for words, as far as just talking about the experience of racism. New York Times put out a great book list for kids starting at like 3 all the way up to 12. So all you got to do is Google New York Times books to talk about racism. Boom, you're done. And so, you know, there's resources out there. But as far as specifically relating to protests, and if the kid has questions about, like, you know, what is going on, to me, 2 terms that you really need to be able to bring up to your kid, that they will understand as young as, you know, 5 years old, is superiority and hatred. You got to be able to talk about both, and all you got to do is say, you know what, you know how, you know what hatred is, right? You know how, you know, because they might be like, I hate broccoli, you know, and you're like, yeah, so, you know, how do you feel when you see broccoli? You don't like it, you treat it really badly, you want to throw it in the trash, huh? Like, hatred, that's what, you know, sometimes people hate other people like that, and let them, you know, let that sink in. Like, some people, when they hate, they treat people really badly, and that's what's happening. There's some people that really hate other people, and, you know, then you name it, you're like, okay, keep a lot of, right, you don't have to say all, but there's a lot of white people that hate other people, and you know, and they treat them really badly because of it. You know, what do you think about that? And let them be like, they do, they hate them, you know, just whatever the level of conversation, but the word hatred has to be in there so they can understand where this treatment is coming from. It's not, oh, you know, I don't know, some people just make mistakes and do bad things. Like, you're being too vague. Why did they do it? Because they hate, you know, they hate a race, they hate a racial group, they hate minorities. And then superiority is another word that I think is important. And you can, you know, maybe there's another word for that, but the idea of, like, you know, when people think they are better than someone else, they treat that person really badly. You're just trying to equate, where is this bad treatment coming from, you know? So if I think I'm better than someone, I treat them like they really don't matter. So you know how that's why people are having these posters that say Black Lives Matter? Well, because there's some people that think they're better than Black people, and so they've been treating them like they don't matter. And you see how, you know, do you see why we are saying that? And then, you know, a kid can kind of be like, they ask their questions, but you have to just start with honesty. Don't sugarcoat it, you know, don't hide it under other words. Hatred and I'm better than you is really the ground building for racism. Like, that, those are the 2 places it comes from, right? Yeah, someone said a false sense of superiority. If false or not, they believe it, you know what I'm saying? We tell them it's false. But yeah, you know, so to me, I think being able to articulate those words, even if it makes you cringe to say, like, some people just really hate other people, and then let it land and be like, ah, what are they gonna, you know, what are they gonna do with that? But they're gonna understand it. Their kids are a lot stronger than we give them credit for. They think deeper than we give them credit for. They're more resilient than we give them credit for. So none of this is gonna make them fall over and, you know, cry in a corner and be, I don't know, like, undone like we think it will be. They're going to be
Yeah.
like, huh, you know.
Somebody missed the name of the book that you just referenced.
Oh yeah, it's
So
called a kid's book about racism, and it's like red and white on the cover.
okay,
Yeah, Jelani Memory.
that was the name. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So we had somebody talking about, and I think
Hi, Helen.
giving great examples of, you know, people want to know exactly or what to say, like what does that sound like. They understand
Yes.
generalizations, but so they want a conversation between mom, you, or you saying this, or caregiver, to say maybe a teen at this point, a black teen, and
Mhm.
having these tough conversations about it. So now we've talked about the younger. Can we go into maybe the teen tween age?
I mean, I think it's still the same two pieces
Correct.
if they don't get it yet, but now you can go deeper. Now you can be like, okay, hatred, what does that look like? What are other groups that people hate? Like get them involved in the conversation. It's not a lecture. So when you ask questions, you can say, do you see how people are treating people, because they hate a whole racial group? What are some other groups that you've seen be hated on by other groups? And then they can say something. They can, um, you know, you can bring up Native Americans and be like, look at the history here, like compare it to other things. Let them share, what do they think? How are they feeling about it? So it's really still the same topics of being better than, are they better than, what made you, when did they start thinking that? What have you learned in school? What are you seeing on social media? What questions do you have about this superiority piece? What questions do you have about hatred? So that teen can really be like, can people hate so much that they can kill someone? And you get to be like, yeah, what do how do you feel about that? That's pretty deep, right? And let them kind of be like, whoa, it's, if they tear up, you're allowed to tear up. You're allowed to just sit in silence and watch them take it in and be like, really? So does that mean people hate me? And you can be like, yeah, like people hate dad, people hate grandpa. Did you remember the story that grandpa said about that time when he was blah, blah, blah? You know what I mean? Bring it all in so they can bring it all in together.
Now, what if so the kids that are seeing some topics on social media, right?
Mm-hmm.
And and maybe before we were all on, this on at home and social distancing,
Yeah.
this has happened before, and so this isn't new. But is there a way that maybe children can, talk with other children about it? If
Mm-hmm.
it's in a safe space, is there an opportunity to maybe, you know, like what should they do if they see it, like on the playground and they identify it, and, the hatred, or the,
A
coming back
child
and,
with another
mhm,
child.
yeah.
Oh, I mean, that's a tough one. I mean, I guess it would have to, it depends. Is the hatred being directed at the kid themselves? Because then maybe a parent
Yeah,
can,
we have
okay,
someone somebody who asked that,
okay,
said, the N word to the child. And
um,
so on the playground, and they wanted to know the best way to address it to this child, who I believe was 8 years old, and how do you address it with the child, and then outside of
okay,
that within the educational system or school
oh, yeah,
teacher, that kind of level.
right. So different levels. So the first level is like after the fact, how do we talk about it with the kids? So kids 8, kid comes home, someone called me the N word. All right, let's sit down. How did that feel? That's a bad word. That's a word that people don't say. Like, what do you know about this word, first of all? Like, that's what you're kind of getting at. Well, I thought that, you're not supposed to call people that. Isn't that an insult? Yes, it is. So someone just insulted you based on your skin color, based on your background, what do you think about that? Do they even know you? Why do you think they wanted to insult you? I don't know. That's why, okay, well, one of the reasons is because they were taught, right? Someone taught them that your skin color should be hated. What do you think about that? Don't you think that that's kind of, you can sort of, gosh, it doesn't seem like they based it on much. They didn't even get to know you, did they? They don't know how funny you are. They don't know you did this. And well, guess what? They're missing out. You kind of, so then you give them this confidence of being like, oh, you just minimize me, but I'm not going to be minimized. I'm not going to own that term. And so the next time they get called the N word, maybe you can coach them with responses of like, oh, too bad you don't even get to know me because, like, I don't know, you're lost, like call me what you want, but that's not what I am. So peace out, you know, give them that kind of confidence to walk away. And instead of, I think what happens first is if you hear a bad word, you automatically get that sense of like, I must be that. You know, I remember when I was a kid and I was called the N word. I was called a Hershey chocolate bar one time, which is really not a bad word. Like, but I just knew what they meant. You know what I mean? I knew they were insulting me because of the racial group. And so I was like, this is bad. And I remember I went to the teacher and I was like, he called me, you know, and then I still remember, it's so clear like it was yesterday. The teacher looked at me and she was like, well, are you a Hershey chocolate bar? And I was like, no. Like, and then she was like, all right then, you know, and she could have done a little bit more, but for her and her age, she was a old white lady. But I was like, you know what? I'm not like, why am I feeling bad about you? And so that's your thing. That is not me. So I just skipped off. The rest of recess was cool. You know what I'm saying? But there was no preparation for me beforehand. So all I knew is you were insulting me and you made me feel horrible, you know, but only because I believed it. So there has to be some aftermath and some preparation for the next time. Like, you are you, and nothing anybody can say, you know, like, can take that away from you. So the stronger you feel in that, the more you'll be able to be like, whatever, you know?
Yeah. So I appreciate that. And I think that also kind of goes back into arming our children with the responses, but at that moment when it hits you, you see the person's face.
Yeah.
And you know that, you know, whether or not they're saying chocolate or, you know, the N word, you can
Right.
see the expression and you can equate that with, you
Yeah.
know, this is bad.
Right.
So would you still, as mom, you know, be like, I'm about to go march over and talk to that kid? Or, you know, is the line, you know, we can't do that. But you want to.
Right.
But do you go to the parent? I mean, not, you know,
Yes, I do think
or go to teacher first?
I would definitely say if that is an incident that is happening on campus, I think it is well within the parents' right to go to the school and be like, how are you addressing this? Are there any, like, what are the assemblies, what classes, what I want all of the students in this, you know, school to learn about, you know, racism or whatever, so that these incidents don't happen. You don't, targeting one kid is not going to solve the problem, because what about the next kid? So you certainly are within your rights to be like, you know what, I never did ask how this school handles stuff like this. You know, how do you handle it? What are my options? What are you guys, what assemblies are coming up? What speakers are coming up? How do you handle, I don't know, Black History Month? You know what I'm saying? And then you get yourself, as far as advocating for your child on that administration level, to get the education for the other kids that need it. But one-to-one, you're not going to do nothing when you go to little, you know, kid on the playground and be like, and if I ever, you know, they're just going to be like, the next day, your mom did this. So then you got double problems for your kid.
Oof, don't have me find the mother or the parent of that child.
By the way, someone called Thomas someone called Thomas a troll because he was saying he likes chocolate with cinnamon.
Oh,
But they don't know that
they
Thomas is
don't
just
know
learning. Hi,
Thomas.
Thomas.
Thomas is on MASC board, and I'm you know, just like someone said they love your hair. So I think it's just, you know, well wishers. So thank you for that,
Yeah.
though. Thanks for being in there. We appreciate you. Um, let's see. So we have a couple more questions.
Okay.
Folks are really looking for the time right now to be advocates and for their Black children, and to really figure out this time with them. You know, protests, and is it
Yeah.
advisable to bring them, or what's
Yeah.
your take on you know, the protests that are happening right now, and
Yeah.
with or without bringing your children along with you?
No, I think it's a great question. And I think you let the child lead. If you're watching the news and the kid is like, can we go? then you can ask that kid, do you want to go protest? Do you want to make a sign? All right, well then let's look into it. I'm going to help you do the thing that you want to do. We'll find a safe way to do it if that's the case. Maybe we'll go to, we'll go and we'll leave a little bit early, because we know some of the protests after a few hours, police start doing what they're doing. So maybe you go, leave a little earlier. But if you have a kid that's like, I don't want to go at all, great. You don't have to go. Let's do something at home. Do you want to make a sign for someone else to take? Do you want to buy some supplies that maybe the protesters will need and we'll just drive over and give them? Do you want to, use some of your allowance and donate it to an organization? Like, you give them the options. But I don't think there's anything wrong with, as long as you feel like you can keep them relatively safe, let the child have that experience. I've worked with a family that has already done that. And it was a younger child, and they were kind of like, the child asked. So one of the parents took them, and that child was like, this was the best day of my life. I can't
Wow.
wait.
So we moving, folks want to know ways to, if they're not going to be able, what are other ways that they can speak up during this time? I know we talked about learning and, arming ourselves with information. What else would you suggest for tips during this time with, unrest and with what's going on, and kind of what everybody is hearing? So any suggestions on ways that we can now what should we do
going forward?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. Oh gosh, I think there's so much, but I think
we talked about books. We talked about
yeah.
Sharing those with our teens. What about some organizations? Maybe looking into some different organizations that are.
Yeah, I mean, definitely getting involved with an organization, but I also think more discussions at home. And like, for me, it's important to help a child develop their own thoughts. So more questions like, why do you think that? How do you feel about this? Okay, you saw this thing on the news. How do you feel about it? What do you wish would happen? What do you think should happen? How do you think, what do you think the president should be saying right now? And then no answer is wrong. Let them say, I wish the president would put everybody in jail. Okay, why do you think that? And how do you think that would fix the problem? And more talking gets them to explore what they're thinking, and you get a chance to hear what they're thinking, and then how to help them even further, rather than just, okay, come on, we're going to go do this thing, and the kid is like, I don't know why we're doing this. You need to be able to ask them, like, how are you feeling right now? Do you feel uncomfortable? Do you feel unsafe? Why? We're keeping you safe. What do you think you're worried about? What do you feel about that? What do you want to do about that? And then show them, like, this is not just Black people. Show them other groups that have had to resist, like, across the globe. You can make that a whole activity at home. Like, all right, let's start with, where have we seen resistance happening? Here, there's a resistance over here. There's current resistance there. Show them that when people with little power want change, this is what they do. They come together in mass to make their voice heard. And how many times have Black people had to do it? But, have Native Americans had to do it? Have Latinos had to do it? Have, Asians in different countries had to do it? Yes, 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 and there's some good kids books on, like, resistance.
Yeah, MASC is collecting and trying to curate a list. So we're working on that. So if folks have any suggestions, Jen, if you have any suggestions, we're hoping to get our list together and put that out as resources. So I hope folks will stay tuned on our social media channels. I know we're going to be finishing up pretty soon, but one of the questions that we had that I really want to talk about is, the permission to feel right now, and the healing that also needs to take place. Can you talk about self-care during we went from one pandemic, and also now, as racism is, as we've learned, is definitely a trauma.
Mhm.
Um, what
It's
do
a
you
whole different
suggest? Correct. A
Mhm.
pandemic within a pandemic, absolutely.
Mhm.
What would you suggest to families, parents, and children, caregivers, all, to practice self-care during this time?
Wow. As a family, or you just mean individually?
Whatever you, I mean, yeah, just, I mean, there's different ways that I think that adults do it, but I think
Yeah.
we tend to forget that children may also need a timeout and some,
Yeah.
maybe some meditation or some kind of quiet time to kind of
Yeah.
reflect.
I mean, yeah, I think if especially if it's a religious family, you can use that time to really connect back to your faith and be like, this is how we find comfort through prayer, through meditation, through, reading sacred texts, through singing songs. You can do all of that. As much, maybe even worshiping together as, maybe on Zoom or something like that. But besides that, I think if it is a family trying to help kids with self-care, then it really might be things like, you know what, let's take your phone for a little bit. Let's have a 2 hour break. We'll all put them down. Let's do something else together. Let's, I don't know, watch some funny show on Netflix and we can just laugh and escape for a little bit. Let's cook together. But we are all gonna, you might have to force the social media breaks. I think especially for the kids that are on, like, they've got their own phones and they're always on, without even meaning to. They're going to be inundated. And just from the teens that I've been talking to, a lot of them are feeling really anxious. Some of them get nauseous because they're
Mm,
seeing so much, and maybe they're trying to advocate because a lot of times they're very vocal about Black Lives Matter stuff, and then some of their peers are maybe not, you know, on the same, page, and so that makes them really upset. And so then they feel like if they put their phone down, they're not doing enough. So you really might have to be like, look, it's okay. The way that we continue to fight is if we take care of ourselves too. So
so that we can continue the fight.
exactly,
Absolutely. I
yeah,
saw, Nancy, thank you for suggesting artwork. I think that is, one of the best things to get kids in, to sharing about their feelings in a different way. I
mm-hmm.
also think, someone mentioned that it is in Ohio, they just declared racism a public
Wow,
health
oh,
issue.
oh,
So thanks
that's
for
amazing.
sharing that. That's something that we could definitely look
Yeah.
into. There are the last thing that I really was hoping that we could talk about was just the idea of not seeing color. Can you talk about just that, how as folks that are on social media and you're seeing like folks that are really, now it's everybody's doing the anti-racist work and trying to amplify Black voices, and they're really trying to. I think they're trying to be meaningful and, or and saying, "Look at me, I'm not. I
Right.
don't see color." Can you just talk
Oh,
why, on just the other end, that it's okay to see my color. It's
yeah.
okay.
I think it's so problematic to be colorblind, of course, but I think what people are, if I give them a little bit of the credit, what they're trying to do is they're trying to show they believe in equality, right? But that's what they mean. But they don't realize they're erasing everybody when they're like, I just want to show you I care about, equality. So you are allowed to talk about, like, you can talk about equality and not erase color. So I think that's what they need to be able to understand is like, talk about equality and keep the color in there, because when you erase, you're erasing everybody. We don't try to be like gender blind. We don't tell our kids, well, I don't see boys and girls and trans, and like, yes we do. Like, we totally tell them that. So if you're able to talk about that, or we don't say I'm hairstyle blind, I don't notice ponytails. Like, yes you do. Like, if you notice mommy got a haircut, well then you're noticing differences, and that's okay. And guess what? I was the same before I got a haircut, and I was the same after. So that's the idea of equality. So I think the goal is, I'm trying to get my kid to see everyone as equal. okay, but you get them to see them as equal with differences, right? You know, within their differences, we can all be on the same plane of, you know, worth and value and access to blah, 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 and still be different people. So to me, I think if anybody has that urge to kind of tell a kid to be colorblind, that's what I would say. Like, no, I know where you're trying to go, but let's shift it this way. And you're still getting the same message across, but it's going to be more authentic and it's going to be more useful for the kid.
Perfect. Yeah, well, I cannot, I could ask you questions all day. I wish we just had you on, every week. We might have to during this time because folks have way more questions than we have time for. And I encourage
Well, you
folks
guys
to
go. Let's
leave.
stay on some more then.
Ah, okay. Look at you. Thank you so much. I might need to charge my phone though. I gotta plug in
Oh,
my
I sprung
but
that on you.
can you talk about since I do have you and folks, if you guys want to stay and ask a couple more questions of Jenn, she's been thank you for being so gracious with your time. I think while I go run and grab I think if you could talk about the uh, the movement that is happening right now. We had a family who is a white mom who did a transracial adoption with for a black child, and she was asking, how the child is saying, I don't like my skin right
Right.
now. So are there ways to kind of
Oh
counter
yeah.
that right now?
Oh
And
yeah, yeah,
I'll
yeah.
leave you to talk to our folks,
Yeah, go
but
get your charger. And then I see Dahlia is asking, can we DM questions? Yeah, or just put them in the chat. Probably then I can see them. But the first thought about that particular question was the book by Taye Diggs, Chocolate Me. It's such a great book, and it just gets exactly at that, which is like skin color stuff. And if you don't know the story, for anybody's watching, Chocolate Me is literally about a little boy. He is a dark brown boy, just like Taye Diggs was when he was a kid, right? And he goes to school, and someone insults him for the color of his skin, and he comes home and tells mom, and mom says, what, your skin is like chocolate. And then they make chocolate cupcakes together, and then the kid takes them to school, and of course all the kids are like, I love chocolate and I love you now. And so then the kid's like, chocolate me. So it's good for probably up to 7 years old,
yeah.
maybe. Then you might need another kind of book after that. But as far as that question goes, and I also think when a parent asks a question like that, like how do I help my kid with their skin color? That means they're not comfortable with their kid's skin color yet, or they're not comfortable with different skin color. And I think that is a really big problem for transracial adoption, is that the parents really have to be comfortable and ready to talk about the differences that exist within their own home. Um, these are a white mom, you said, that adopted a black child, has to be able to sit and talk about the differences. They have to be able to check themselves. Have they checked enough how they feel about black skin? Do they feel there's something wrong with being dark brown? Because if they do, then that means they're going to go ask somebody, what should I say? Because really in their own heart, they're like, oh yeah, it is kind of bad. What should I say instead? You know what I mean? That's what I feel like they're asking. And so there really has to be some work done, some self-searching, to be like, do I not, dang, do I still have concerns about dark skin? Maybe I also wish my child was lighter. Dang, like what do I do about that? Well, I better go read some books myself so I can really show on a deeper level that I love my son's skin, so that he can also, you know what I mean? He is gonna, it doesn't always start with that one peer. It's also gonna exist at home, you know? So even with
Yeah.
that book, Chocolate Me, mom was the one that was like, what? Your skin is like chocolate. You're amazing. And then the kid's like, my mom said. So that parent is having a hard time doing that, probably because they're having a hard time within themselves, That's just
Yeah,
the
and
real. It's,
I'm seeing some good book recommendations there in the comments. Soulway,
yeah,
I really enjoyed
repeat
as
yes,
well.
yeah,
Yes, Lupita's, yeah, book. Definitely want to go over, just in summary, we talked about, Google is our friend. We talked about different books for
mhm,
as research and to kind of be able to have in your home so
yeah,
that children, Black
yeah,
children, can definitely see themselves, have these accurate
yeah,
reflections of themselves
right.
in
That's
their
through
home,
art,
whether it's,
through, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, right. No, no, no. I think definitely, did you see the new Crayola crayons that they have? And
Right.
Lakeshore, we've been using theirs for years. Definitely want to make sure that you bring in those items into your home. Whether it's the artwork or we talked about arts and crafts, colors, crayons, and books, and anything else that I'm leaving out, so
Yeah,
that
like
we
think,
can raise
yeah,
our Black children
yes.
and also in other homes we should have those books anyways.
Yeah, I think more films. There's lots of great films to watch that show like, you know, positive, really empowering images, photography, artwork, again, like going and looking at like resistance stories from across the globe. Those are things that are really empowering and let people come into like, oh, like I I do like my people did that. I'm a part of that. Like that's really cool. And just kind of digging into the piece of like comparing and contrasting so that people can better own, their own experience. Athena says non-black kids should have black dolls. Yeah, there should be an array. Certainly if you are purposefully excluding, then yes, you are sending a message. So it should just be like all of these dolls are, wonderful. Which one, like which do you feel today? Which doll, is representing you right now? Like, so I don't know. I think it's the more that you can expose. I think exposure to imagery is really important. Yeah, and definitely community. If you can build community,
So I
I think
want to go back there was
yeah.
one here that said, what about kids that are half white and half Black? How do you explain that they are Black if they I guess if she says really that look white or really white? Um, and to back up, I think those are, really on, asking yourself, I know I felt that way too. I even asked, Delia, we were talking about, can I even lead this conversation? My father, as you know,
Mhm.
is Black. And that's something that, for myself, that I'm still, have to recognize my privilege in
Mhm.
conversations in talking about that, but know that I still have a voice in this. And so I think there is a conversation that I hope to have, not only today being for Black, parents of or parents of Black children, but to also have that space for, those that are mixed with Black, and how, to kind of help them navigate their feelings if they maybe, it says this one here, Black but look white.
Yeah,
Any thoughts on that by, you know, you can have
yeah,
those feelings?
yeah. I mean, I think first of all, it's if you can't talk about it, that's going to be the beginning of the problem. You've got to be like, you know what, this is what you are, and you look this way. Like you will always be Black and white, no matter what you look like. And so let's first start there. Let's let that sink in. Like, it doesn't matter what anybody tells you outside, that is what you are. Now, let's talk about the way you look, right? Let's talk about genetics. Like, this is the face you got. This is the hair you got. So what does that mean? Yeah, people are going to keep questioning you. People are not going to treat you a certain way, and they might treat, if let's say mom is darker or something like that, well, they might treat me a certain way that they won't treat you a certain way. that's privilege. So you are going to have a certain type of privilege based on color, based on phenotype. So now, knowing those two things, that you have a privilege, but you are still Black, how are you going to use that to better your whole group? Because it's still your group. You know what I mean? You don't say, well, you're not really in that group because you don't look it. So, like, just, skip on with your life, because that's how we get separation. That's how we get disowning. That's how we get someone that doesn't feel someone that is, let's say, a monoracial Black doesn't feel they're supported by someone else because they didn't look it. This is where you want someone who, to the rest of the world, doesn't look it, but is like, I'll be damned if I'm going to shut up about it. Right? You can, look at me all you want, but I am going to speak for my people because they're still my people. Look at Halsey. I think Halsey's such a great example of the singer. She's Black and white, and she is like, I am very aware that I pass as a white woman every single place I go. But oh well for you, like, I know what I am. I know I'm mixed, and I know I'm Black, and I know I'm white. I know what you think I look like. You're going to have to deal with that on your own. I'm not going to change it for you and make you feel comfortable. And, I'm just going to be. And so you have to be able to prepare them to do that at a young age. And it's just, that's honesty. You just got to be like, yeah, you're right. You don't look, that's what you look like. You don't have curly hair. You don't have, whatever. Like you and I are both half Black, right? We're both mixed with Black, but our phenotypes are so different. But that doesn't change it just means, yeah, you might have had different treatment than I would have, but there's no way we're not in the same group. Like, never. You know what I mean? You would have to get rid of your father to not be in the group. So, you know what I'm saying? So
I
helping the
do,
kids.
Jen. Yes, you are helping me. I need a private session. What are you doing after
Oh,
this? Yeah, no, it is really, I think I see Kelly up in there saying, yes,
yeah,
teach them how to use their privilege.
right.
Definitely I am still learning and want to be aware of that and address that, and I think that's important as well. Um, so in the last moments, is there, how do you want to end this? How do you feel like, did I miss anything in the conversations? I think we answered a lot of these. But,
Yeah.
how did we miss anything?
No, I
Did
don't
we?
think, I don't know that we missed anything. I just think I'm trying to answer your questions not only with parents of Black children in mind, but also parents of mixed race Black children in mind, like Black and anything else. And also parents that don't have children that are Black at all. Like, I think these answers should be across the board. You know what I mean? They should work for all groups. Because let's say if you're a parent and you don't have a Black child, you still have a friend that does, or I hope you have a friend that does, or I hope you're interacting with, in your circle, someone that has a child that's Black. And so you still want to be able to check how you talk. Can you have honest discussions? If you're a teacher, if you're a nurse, you're going to interact with, if you're teaching children, if you're interacting with children, then you need this information as well. So, it's like, I think those answers should be for everybody, but maybe some specific things, especially for the kid that's like, I'm feeling the brunt of it though. Like I'm seeing people that look like me on the TV being maltreated. Okay, well then let's address that a little bit more specifically. But across the board, we all need to be talking about this, and we all need to be changing the way we, expose all of our kids, and raise all of our kids in that way.
Now, I don't seem to have a problem talking about, the what it means to be Black, or, the things and tools that, but there's online that they're talking about, don't ask you know, are, you know, because of the emotional labor that, you know, work that goes into answering some of these questions. So if they happen to, if folks, parents, anyone, individuals who want to know how can they be, you know, an ally, if you will, or, you know, practice the anti-racist work that,
Yeah.
you know, we're kind of moving, we're encouraging folks to. We talked
Yeah.
about some of the resources. We talked about MASC. Conscious Kid
Yeah.
is doing some good work.
Mm.
Anyone else that you could think of that we could also
Yeah.
refer folks to?
Yeah, actually, I was gonna say after this, I'll post in my stories like some screenshots of a Google Doc that's been going around. It's basically a whole list of anti-racism resources for white folks, and it's got books, it's got articles, it's got podcasts, it has films, it has, I mean, anything you're, you know, if you're into podcasts, okay, it's got a list of that. So I'll post that because I think to your point of doing the emotional labor, you know, this could be a resource. It's like, all right, let me just tag you in this video. Now you go watch it and you think about it. You know, here's a book. You go buy it. You read it. Don't ask me to explain and give you the, you know, rundown and lecture you. And I mean, that's the difference between sharing, like directing them somewhere, and then versus doing the work for them. So that's why I
Perfect.
say just, you know, when I said Google New York Times books for kids about racism, work is done. You know.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. You know, like I said, I can have you on every week. Athena is agreeing that we need weekly sessions. How can folks find you?
Well, my Instagram is the most like commonplace I am, I guess, Dr. Jenn Psych. So, and then there's my website is listed there. So I'm really, that's really where I live. I'm Dr. Jenn Psych on Twitter and on Facebook, but I'm mostly on Instagram. So, yeah.
Well, we love Dr. Jenn. Thank
Thanks for
you.
having me. This was great.
No, thank you. Yeah, we hope to get some more stuff done. See us on social media. We'll see you
Yeah.
guys there. Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate you all. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.